Get it right, you. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, and welcome to a special Monday issue of the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast this is number 210. This is the one about it's SIFU Dan Inosanto. You. As you're logging in, if you'd be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button and feel free to continue doing so throughout the broadcast. If you're catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you enjoy my work and you'd like to support the program, please visit jkdrebel.com, click on the Rebel Gear link, and that's where you'll see stuff like this. The 4 tenets of Jeet Kune: t-shirt, long sleeve, short sleeve, hoodie, coffee mug, all that good stuff. Okay, so this is not going to be surprising to anyone. Everybody pretty much knows where this comes from. It's a post by Kevin Myers, a member of the I Love Jeet Kune Facebook group. And I have it here. I'll read it to you. It'll take me a few minutes to read this, but it's important. And then you guys can verify all this. You can look it up on your own. What Kevin said was, I've noticed over the last year, more than a few here who have, in so many words, knocked, insulted, and all but dismissed the teachings of JKD by SIFU Inosanto as being not really what Lee was teaching and or not true JKD and what JKD is. For those of you who have done so, please read and think about the following post and quote from Sifu Andy Kimura. Give me 1 second here. I forgot to heads up. Okay, so Sifu Andy writes, my father said this about Sifu Inosanto. Dan knows more about martial arts than any person on the planet. I was witness to countless conversations between Sifu Inosanto and my father. So this is now Andy saying that he was witness to conversations between Sifu Dan and Sigung Taki in regard to JKD. Believe me when I tell you that if anyone on this planet understands what Sijo Lee's art was about, it was those two men. Regardless of how you feel about anything in regards to Junfan Gung Fu or JKD, you owe Sifu Inosanto respect, as he is your senior. Sijo Lee would not tolerate any disrespect or insubordination. Sifu Inosanto was Bruce's close friend, and he trusted him to run his school and teach classes for him. Remember, when you give your opinion or cast judgment on this man while standing on his shoulders, you are a fool. And of course, after posting that, the comments started in. And of course, my good friend and JKD colleague, Mr. Richard Torres, weighed in on the comments. And that's what started everything. I found not just Richard, but a lot of the other comments to be very revealing. And I would say revealing of stuff which we already knew, but also revealing of some new stuff, so to speak. So I'm not going to spend all night going through the entire thing chronologically. When I first looked at it, I think it had about 100 comments. I think it's twice that now, up to probably about 200 comments or so. So I'm just going to go through it chronologically up until the point where I made my notes. So Richard says, we can love Dan, but we also have to realize that he is not infallible. So I commented, it wasn't a reply to Richard, it was just a comment, that if you can read, you'll notice that the post is not at all about loving Dan Inosanto, nor about thinking him infallible. Instead, the post is about speaking about him with respect and not being insubordinate when it comes to his position in the Jeet Kune world, especially relative to your own position or that of your instructor. So this is one of the new things. It hadn't really dawned on me before that. But Richard Torres tends to refer to Dan Inosanto always as simply Dan, never as Sifu Inosanto, never as Dan Inosanto. It's almost as if they are contemporaries and they are therefore on a first name basis. Now, I know that Richard has known Sifu Inosanto for a long time. I have also known him for a long time, and I have never referred to him as Dan. I'm an old school Kung Fu guy. So if I don't use your title, I'll use your full name or I'll use your last name, but never just your first name alone. I dare anyone to find a post or a comment from me about Sifu Ted Wong, where I simply refer to him as Ted. I dare you to find that. I guarantee you, you will not find it. So think about that for a second. Now, there was a time period in the late 1960s, moving into the 70s, and even into the 80s, where in the JKD world, where things were, anti-establishment, let's call it, and therefore somewhat casual and informal. And yes, people did use each other's first names in this martial arts setting. But Richard Torres was not part of the Los Angeles Chinatown Institute, nor was he a member of Inosanto's backyard group. So when I heard Dan Lee, for example, refer to Sifu Inosanto as Dan, made sense to me. If I were to hear Tim Tackett or Chris Kent or even the late, great Del Pollard refer to Sifu Inosanto as Dan, I get it, because those guys are from that era. Those guys were there. They were Los Angeles people. Torres and I are not. So I'd never refer to Sifu Ted Wong as, oh, Ted. That's not my way. In any case, Richard's reply to me was now that just because someone points out a mistake or discrepancies taught as Jeet Kune, that does not mean that the person is being insubordinate or disrespectful towards the person who is teaching those mistakes or discrepancies. Sometimes people confuse a discussion of what was or is being taught as Jeet Kune as an attack on someone's character. They're both totally different. All right, so here's the thing, see? Imagine the size of the wheelbarrow that you need to cart around to think that you qualify to opine on Dan Inosanto's approach to anything, that you qualify to refer to Dan Inosanto's teachings as mistakes or discrepancies. Imagine the size of your wheelbarrow. So what are these mistakes or discrepancies to which he refers? One of them is that Sifu Inosanto changed Jeet Kune. He changed Bruce Lee's approach when he started teaching kicking, punching, trapping, and grappling as the 4 ranges of combat. Whereas Bruce Lee taught 3 ranges, long, middle, and close quarter. So right there, you see that there's a misunderstanding of the term ranges. 3 ranges refers to combat distances. 4 ranges of combat refers to skills that can be applied within the 3 ranges. So you can have long, middle, and close quarter kicking, punching, trapping, and grappling. That's what the 4 ranges are about. Now, what Richard Torres refuses to accept is that Inosanto did not change anything. He did not make a mistake. This is not a discrepancy in Jeet Kune teaching, because the 4 ranges was never set up to replace the 3 ranges. There was never an argument between the two. Dan Inosanto never said, hey, I'm changing Bruce Lee's approach. I'm changing Jeet Kune, and it's not the 3 ranges of combat. It's the 4 ranges of combat. Bruce Lee was wrong. Bruce Lee made a mistake. No, it was never that. So for him to now characterize Inosanto's teachings as mistakes or discrepancies, I want to see the size of the wheelbarrow. So 4 ranges of combat was and still is meant to convey the idea that at certain distances, aka ranges, kicking might be more appropriate than punching or trapping or grappling. In other words, at a particular range, kicking makes sense. hence kicking range. That's all it was. An idea to express a concept, or a concept to express an idea. Take it however you want. Not a mistake, and certainly not an attempt to move away, an attempt by Dan Inosanto to move away from his instructor's teachings and set himself up as somebody who knew, perhaps even better than Bruce Lee, what combat was about. This ties into another one of Richard's favorite canards, the famous Inosanto JKD blend. I don't have the thing. Maybe I'll put it up in post-production or something. But you can see it if you take the time to scroll through all the comments. You can find a rendition of it, and I think it screen captures from a video that was shot. I think it's a Walt Missingham video that was shot in maybe the mid '80s or so down in Australia, and what it shows. So Richard purports that it proves that Inosanto was adding styles to Jeet Kune and calling all of that cross training in other styles Jeet Kune. So you know what? Bear with me for a second, because I think I can put it up on screen. I can put it up on screen for you because I want you to see what we're talking about. All right, so excuse the slowdown here. No. Okay. All right, here we go. Let me put this up on screen for you. Okay, there we go. Right. So what Richard purports that this shows is that Inosanto was adding styles to Jeet Kune because it shows a chasse, right? Yeah, you know what's funny? You know what? This is really interesting, right? Now, people don't even take the time to complain correctly, right? Everybody calls it sachet, sachet, sachet. Now, I've been with Dan Inosanto for almost 40 years. I kind of know how his mind works. So, for example, he has a well-known student, a jazz percussionist named Alex Acuna, and he calls him Alex Kahuna. Why? Because Inosanto was born in 1936. Kahuna is a Hawaiian term with which he's very familiar. So he sometimes doesn't call him Alex Acuna. He calls him Alex Kahuna because they sound alike. Sachet is a word in English that all of us know. Chasse, which is a French word, we are not as familiar with. So a lot of people follow SIFU Dan in his miswording, right? And calls it sachet. The real word is chasse. But my point is this: people are so dumb that they complain and they don't even realize that they're complaining about something that is inaccurate. They don't even take the time, right, to make sure that the quality of their complaint is something where you correct that which was mistaken, and then you start to complain. Anyhow, that's just an aside, right? So this is supposed to show that Inosanto added savat because the kick is the chasse lateral. Then he added a punch. Then he added a trap from Wing Chun, and then he added a lock and a takedown from Jiu-Jitsu. So apparently, what this is, right, is an attempt to show that Inosanto was adding styles. Here's the ridiculous problem with that. Inosanto never said, right, hey world, look now, under my leadership, Jeet Kune has become a blend of savat, boxing, Wing Chun, and Jiu-Jitsu. And you want to know why Dan Inosanto could never have said that? Because he would have left out the Muay Thai and the Penjak Silat, for which he is also well known. So there's no way, if he was teaching that Jeet Kune is now a blend of styles. It is now a form of mixed martial arts, let's call it. There's no way that he would have left out Pencak Silat and Muay Thai. So it's inaccurate to have the opinion that Inosanto is now teaching a specific thing called the Jeet Kune blend. Instead, in fact, I wonder this. What if Dan Inosanto had just shown kick, punch, trap, lock, takedown without naming anything? I wonder if Richard would have had a problem over all these years, because we're talking, I think we're talking 30 something years now. I wonder if he would have had a problem with all that if there had been no names attached to the techniques, just kick, punch, trap, grapple. I say that because if you're not familiar, see, because Larry Hartzell, if I have my facts right, Larry Hartzell was in Australia at the time that this video was made. And Larry Hartzell had just put out his book, Enter to Trap to Grapple. So I'm thinking that this particular video sequence is just an illustration, kind of to help promote Sifu Larry's book. That's my opinion. I can't swear that that's what's going on, but it kind of makes sense to me, because in that particular instance, let's say Missingham says to Inosanto, well, we got to shoot a video and whatever. If what's going on, let's say behind the scenes, is promote Larry's book, if Sifu Hartzell was even there because it was part of a tour and he was it was being highlighted in the grappling or whatever, Dan Inosanto would go ahead and show a sequence like this that ends up in grappling, that shows a possible illustration of how a fight could progress and that techniques could come from anywhere. But now, here's the thing. Loyal to a fault, Sifu Inosanto likes to give credit to things and places and people. So naming the arts was just that, right? It was just being loyal and showing where things came from. I think I froze. Okay, I think I froze. So anyhow, so this is what I'm saying, right? That Sifu Inosanto was just naming stuff in order to give credit where credit was due. But don't lose the major message behind it, which is to illustrate that a useful kick, a useful punch, or a lock could come from any art, and that through training, a student could seamlessly put offensive and or counter-offensive techniques to use. That's it. Now, this, of course, touches on the idea that I mentioned before, that Dan Inosanto and his students advocate that Jeet Kune is somehow some kind of an MMA, right? It's MMA-like because of an emphasis on cross-training. This is so ridiculous, I shouldn't even have to comment on it, but I will. It is possible to be dedicated to one thing and still have an active interest and indeed an active participation in a variant of that one thing. So for example, I once knew a guy whose formal job was playing trombone. That was his formal job. In another informal setting, actually in another band, guess what? He was the bass player. And because he was such a musical badass, he played drums as well. It's possible. So, one last point about Richard Torres. He claims very often that he is just making sure that Jeet Kune history is not rewritten. Well, as far as I know, he's never been appointed by anyone as Jeet Kune's official historian. So I don't understand why he thinks that it falls upon him to declare that his difference of opinion, that his way of thinking is to be taken as a serious rewriting of Jeet Kune history. But I'll give you an example of how you can attempt to rewrite Jeet Kune Do history. You can say that it is Ted Wong who appears at the 1967 Long Beach Internationals in that sparring demonstration with Bruce Lee. That's one way you could attempt to rewrite Jeet Kune Do history. Another way that you could attempt to rewrite Jeet Kune Do history is that in quoting Ted Wong talking about Dan Inosanto as a Jeet Kune Do instructor, you eliminate the word Jeet Kune Do when Ted Wong makes a reference to Dan Inosanto's students. And so it reads Dan's students, not Dan's Jeet Kune Do students. You see, giving it, by twisting that, you give it an implication that somehow perhaps Ted Wong did not think that Dan Inosanto was a Jeet Kune Do instructor, and so he did not have Jeet Kune Do students. That's an attempt, perhaps, because I can't swear to it, right? That's an attempt to rewrite Jeet Kune Do history. One last thing. There's a guy, I don't know him very well, Tyler Creason, but he quipped about Dan Inosanto was making Bruce Lee money. And then Richard kind of corrected him by saying, actually, Bruce Lee was paying Dan Inosanto to teach for him at the LA school. Now, I can't speak for Tyler Creason, but it seems as if when Richard said Bruce Lee was paying Inosanto, that Tyler realized, oh, so Inosanto was not making money for Bruce Lee, he was costing Bruce Lee money. Now, but here's something I do know about Tyler Creason. He intends to open up a school sometime shortly, I believe. He should get used, this is my opinion, he should get used to the idea of this. When you work for someone, more often than not, they pay you. And isn't it interesting that Bruce Lee, perhaps even in a time when money was tight, thought enough and thought highly enough of Dan Inosanto to pay him to run classes at the Chinatown School. Think on that one, right? So this is the last thing. Richard asserts that Bruce Lee never encouraged his students to look at any other martial arts styles because he wrote that instead he sought to free his comrades from adherence, right? From bondage to any type of style or system. But how do we know that Bruce Lee did not advocate training in or looking at other arts in order to come to an understanding of them, in order to come to an understanding of how to use them, how to use what you found useful in those things, but more importantly, how to counter them? Here's what we do know. Bruce Lee certainly made a lot of notes on lots of different arts, don't we? Okay, so I'm going to make something clear here and now. I just spent 23 minutes talking about Richard Torres. This is not to be interpreted as my having any animus towards him. I respect him greatly for his dedication to Bruce Lee and to Jeet Kune Do. But that does not stop me from disagreeing with him vehemently when it comes to Dan Inosanto, nor from thinking that he is quite stubborn when it comes to Dan Inosanto. Richard has a standing, open invitation to come on the Jeet Kune Do dialogues anytime that he wants, to refute any of my assertions, to discuss these matters or any of the matters in Jeet Kune Do. A standing, open invitation to come on the Jeet Kune Do dialogues and talk with me, so that I cannot be accused of being one-sided or closed-minded. All right, that's it. I don't necessarily need anybody to comment on this, but I will shut up now, close up, and go read what everybody had to say. All right, so, okay, that's it. I'm done, right? I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Take care.